Jackson at one point had moved on to the Lakers, and they were playing the Suns, and Reinsdorf apparently has a home there. And he met Reinsdorf for lunch. And Phil Jackson said, can we mend fences? I just want to meet Jerry Krause. It's really silly. Like, we're grown men now. Let's get along. And then Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls, went to Jerry and said, hey, Phil wants to mend it. And Krause was like, nope, I'm not going to mend fences. Okay, then you're a grudge holder, and then you're petty. And, like, that's not anybody's problem. That is a you problem. If you're petty and a grudge holder, it's a you problem. There is a difference between being passive-aggressive. Sometimes, Aaron Rodgers, I say he can be a little passive-aggressive, but that's his personality. Some people don't like conflict. That's okay. There's a big difference between being passive-aggressive and not always confronting people. Maybe you're physically intimidated, age intimidated, power intimidated. If I confront this person, what will they do? If I confront MJ, what will he do? There's a big difference between that and antagonizing people. And when you go to Phil Jackson before a season and you say, you're not going to come back if you're 82-0. What? You just didn't. That's something you should never, ever, ever say. So that's why I don't feel a ton of pity for Jerry Krause. I'm sorry he's gone. I wish he would be in the documentary if it was possible. But when I watch this documentary, there's a reason he came out as the villain. There's a reason when you watch a movie, it's pretty clear who the villain is. He's the villain. He's the antagonizer. He's doing bad things. Krause made it difficult for an organization. And part of being a good GM, frankly, is getting along with people. Getting along with the media, getting along with a coach, getting along with the owner. Being a general, I know about 10 GMs in my life on my cell phone. You got to, get along with lots of people. The media matters. The owner matters. The president matters. Your star matters. The agents matter. You got to get along with people. That is a huge component. He knew basketball. He wasn't good with people. Let's bring in Ric Bucher via the Coward Global Satellite Network, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. The best or nothing. Let's start with this. They having covered the Warriors close and personal, a lot of people are saying now, you know what? MJ, Kevin Durant couldn't play. Just would not work. Personality-wise, I think to myself, maybe they're right. But I also think people like to win, and KD and MJ would have won a lot of games together. KD, your thoughts about this?
Yeah, it would have been a dynamic duo, but I really believe that they would not have complemented each other as well as some other stars because of their talents. Certainly, Michael could have been a facilitator. Rex Chapman just put something out on Twitter about the time that they played him at point guard. He had like 10 consecutive triple-doubles at an age where nobody had triple-doubles. So Michael certainly was able to do that. But I'm not sure that KD could have handled the intensity of Michael Jordan, the demands of Michael Jordan. That would have been the big question. Now, there's always the matter of if a guy comes into the league with a guy and he's conditioned for it right from the beginning and molded to it, could it work? And that's a possibility. But look, the reason that KD left wasn't just the win. Look, they were winning. He was winning with Golden State, but he was never going to be recognized as the best player on the team and deserved to be recognized as such, and just knew I'm never going to knock Steph off of that perch. And so I need to go someplace else where I think I'm going to be fully recognized for who I am. At some point, if he's playing with Michael, that same situation would have occurred. So maybe, yes, maybe they could have won, but they wouldn't have won indefinitely. And that's just a guess that it would have ever worked because Steph was able, like Steph Curry could play with Michael, demonstrated that he could move aside for KD. KD ultimately was always bumping up against the idea that he had to move aside for Clay and for Steph and for Draymond.
By the way, LeBron yesterday came out immediately after the doc and said, I would have loved to have played with MJ. MJ was cooler than LeBron, would have sold more shoes than LeBron, would have been more beloved than LeBron. So it's easy to say, but LeBron would have had to have, I think, taken a little bit of a back seat. Do they work together?
It's funny how LeBron shaped this in that I could have been Scottie. He's welcoming himself to be Scottie Pippen. And the people that I've talked to in the league have said, yes, he would have been Scottie Pippen on steroids. He wanted to be the facilitator. He didn't want to be the go-to guy at the end of games. He could have filled that role. From a basketball standpoint, I believe that 100%. And if he comes into the league as the number 2 to Michael Jordan, then maybe we never get there. But at this stage, the way he described Scottie Pippen, you would have thought Scottie Pippen was the driving force of that team. And he's like, yeah, I could be that. And I'm thinking, dude, if that's what it has to be for you to be okay with it, this would not ultimately work. And so we're also in a different era where we've got 2 guys who, I mean, Michael Jordan never had to compete with anybody for a brand. I don't know that that was ever, I think that happened organically for him, that he became the shoe salesman and the logo and simply the brand ambassador that he became. But nonetheless, he became that. And nobody else was close. And LeBron came into the league saying, I want to be the first billionaire athlete. So from a basketball standpoint, yes, I think it would have worked. From a personality standpoint and what LeBron's ambitions were, not so sure.
I think Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan's mom came across looking great in this. You don't. See, I think the reason Krause was a villain is he's a petty and a grudge holder. And he antagonized people. And I think I think the GMs I know in basketball and football are like, listen, man, I got to deal with owners, agents, stars, valets. You got to be a people person. Jerry wasn't a people person. But you think Phil deserves more heat, I'm told.
Phil is the reason why the dynasty ended, why they didn't get a chance to come back for a four-peat. Now, everybody's saying, and I heard you say it, like you wish that Jerry Krause could have been part of this. The director wishes Jerry Krause could have been part of this. I did a story on Jerry Krause. I knew Jerry Krause. It would not have served Jerry Krause well to be part of this documentary. However bad you think he looks, if he had been interviewed, it would have been worse. I did a story on him, about him for ESPN, the magazine. Basically, this is after everything had gone down with Tim Floyd, and he was getting killed for being a terrible GM. And I thought that was unfair. I thought he deserved credit for putting the talent around Michael that he did. I thought he was right and correct in thinking that they had run their course and that Phil wasn't the coach to coach a rebuilding situation. I thought he was spot on all of that. But Jerry Reinsdorf was willing to overrule Jerry Krause and say, Michael, Phil, you guys earned the chance to come back and try one more time. And Phil said, I'm good. It's time. I need a break. So ultimately, he's the one who decided, I'm good. I don't need to coach Michael another year. And Michael was like, I'm not going to play for anybody other than Phil. So that was the end of it. I honestly, I don't believe that if they had come back. In fact, there was a moment on the court after they beat Utah in 98 where Phil is telling Michael, you did it again. You saved us. It was unbelievable. And Michael's saying, I never doubted it. I never doubted we could get it done. And Phil is looking at him like, well, that's amazing. Because the thought bubble is, I sure did. And I just believe that's where Phil was. Like, couldn't believe that they ultimately got it done in 98. And when they did, he realized we're not going to be able to do this again. I'm ready to go out on top. I don't want to be here dying on the vine with Michael. So let's move on. So that to me was what the documentary clarified was anybody who's saying that Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause brought this thing to an end. No, they were willing to continue for one more year in spite of the lockout, in spite of all the uncertainty, in spite of knowing they're not going to be able to replace Scottie and he's probably not staying. They were willing to give it another go. And Phil said, nah, I'm good.
Finally, be remiss if I didn't ask you this. NBA this morning, California's governor went from the most cautious big state governor to far more aggressive in the last 48 hours, obviously facing some business obviously facing some business pressure in the state of California from conservatives and Democrat billionaires. This morning, do you feel like we'll have an NBA season?
Oh, without question. I mean, I've been fairly confident all along based on what people in the league were telling me, and I was feeding off of their confidence. I had a few people that were saying the logistics are tougher than you think, and I was listening to that, and I knew that a lot of this had to do with outside influences in terms of the testing. Essentially, was the number one thing. But we're at this point now where testing is going to be widely available. There's not going to be a PR nightmare if they're testing the players every day. And let's face it, we're in a position now with the NBA and with professional sports. Everything is going to start from zero. You'd have to blow up the collective bargaining agreement, what the NFL would look like. Nothing can end. You can't not have resume the NBA season. You can't not have an NFL season unless you're willing to say, we're just starting from scratch on all these, because all the TV money goes and the whole salary cap structures of those two sports in particular are completely destroyed. So it's a matter of, let's find a way to make this work. Let's try to minimize the risk. But ultimately, if we want our sports to continue as we know them in some form or fashion, we have to get back to playing. And everybody knew it. And that's why when Adam said there's no back end to this, like we'll start next season as late, or at least the reports were, we'll start next season as late as we have to. I said, they're going to find a way to resume this season